Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Classes of Mail. My name is Alan Gigax. And if I sound different, it sounds different to me because I got a new computer for strictly for podcasting. I went out and bought a Windows computer. I'd been doing everything on a Chromebook so that I could download Audacity and also so that I could record Zoom sessions so that I can properly interview people and get myself into the futuristic year of like 2018. So here I am. I am now this is my first episode recording on Audacity, and I've been listening back to it. Just done a couple of sample sessions, and it sounds muffled to me. And I don't know, maybe you won't hear it, maybe you will. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of features on Audacity, and I don't know what they do. So we'll see. It's a work in progress. But guys, this episode has been delayed long enough, and I really needed to talk about what happened at the election. So my union election was this last Wednesday. I'm recording this now on Saturday, November the 9th, and it was a hell of a meeting. Let me cut to the chase and get to the results first. We lost. So we already know that our union has a very strong incumbent bias, that the incumbents win re-election like 93% of the time or something like that. And then we've talked plenty about the improprieties in my local election, and those improprieties are aimed at keeping down turnout, which favors the incumbent. And that is definitely what we saw in the results of the election. So the incumbents won by such a wide margin that in the three-way races, the two challengers together didn't get as many votes as the incumbent. And so for both Michael and me and Jonathan, this is our first campaign, and we've learned some things. Like, for example, the retirees vote for the incumbents, which we knew, but we didn't realize like how much of an issue that would be to overcome. So it looks like maybe um, all told, there were a little over 400 votes cast. Our turnout was maybe in the 25% range, which, that's part of the problem that we had in this election was that the improprieties held down turnout. So, anyway, around half of those ballots, we think, came from our retirees. And Michael and I went to stations and dropped off literature and tried to talk to people and spread the word among carriers, but we never really did anything to contact retirees because the only good way to do that is by sending out a mailer, and that would have cost us like $2,000. And dude, I don't have $2,000 to spend on mailing out a please vote for me to retirees. So maybe that's part of the problem because the other two campaigns did mail out to the retirees or mailed out to the entire branch. So regardless, there are lessons to be learned. I also found out that it is possible to have pre pre-shift meetings in the break rooms at the various stations, and so I'm thinking about doing that as part of my campaigning, where I would show up, 15 minutes before work. Like I'd have to post about it in advance. Hey, we're going to have this meeting, and then I could talk about issues and campaign then. It's not on the clock. And if we could distribute literature in the break room, then it seems like we'd be able to talk to people in the break room too. I don't think that would be prohibited campaigning, but I'm not positive. So if you know for sure whether that's allowed or not, please let me know because I think that would really help people to get to know me, get to know Michael and Jonathan, and to help get our message out. Because we are going to be rerunning this election. It is not well, it hasn't been decided yet, but it is essentially guaranteed because there were even more last minute improprieties. Like I got called the night before the election, or no, it was a couple days. Oh, it was a couple days before. Maybe we did talk about this on a previous episode where the branch secretary actually called me and told me the election was canceled. That was the Thursday before the election. We elect on Wednesday. So Friday and Saturday at my station, I let people know, hey, the election's been canceled, because of all these improprieties. You don't need to send in your ballots. And then suddenly on Tuesday, the election is back on. And so a number of people additionally got disenfranchised from that. And by the time it was vote counting time, there were people on the election committee who didn't even want to count votes because this whole election is a sham. It's a farce. Why would we even waste our time counting, spending 6 hours counting votes or whatever it took? And so every opinion that I have heard from anyone on the election committee is in favor of rerunning the election. So the question is that going to change the outcome? We don't know. Um, we know that there's impropriety, and Michael and I are going to have to do a more aggressive job of bringing that to the attention of the membership. Because at the meeting, when the topic of improprieties came up, people got upset. And the general feeling from the people, from the members who were at the meeting was like, this is ridiculous. This is not okay. And obviously, that's the way we feel as well. Dude, the the good old boy network was still pulling shit at the meeting. Like, so we brought charges against the chair of the election committee, and I dropped those off the week before on like must have been Tuesday of the week before because I brought them in on my day off. So 8 days in between. And in that time, the chair of the election committee resigned his position. And then we're ready at the meeting to hear these charges read, and the branch secretary said, "Oh, well, he's the that guy that we were charging, who was supposed to be in charge of the election. He didn't show up." And so not only did he not show up, but the branch secretary never served him with the charges. Oh, I haven't seen that guy, so I haven't been able to serve him with the charges. And so, what do you know? The charges weren't able to be read at the meeting. What a coincidence! How convenient for them. And then on top of that, the branch secretary tried to say that we can't even talk about the improprieties in the election because the election is still going on. And if you try to talk about the election, he says, I'm going to call you out of order. And we're like, dude, how is that relevant? The people who are counting the ballots are already submitted. It's not like we're changing the ballots. And they're over in the other room doing their ballot counting. They're not even part of this conversation. And so we had to fight for that. And then on top of that, there's an agenda for these meetings. And of course, the discussion period was put in the agenda after the results were announced, but we knew the results weren't going to be announced until like 11 o'clock at night. And so we had to make a motion to move the discussion period to earlier in the meeting so that we could get to it. And of course, the good old boys tried to prevent that from happening. No, we have the agenda set up like this for a reason, and we should have that discussion period at the end. Yeah, just like when Renfro wanted his charges to happen on Friday after everybody had gone home. So, again, at the temperature of the room, we won that motion very easily. And, it was a super lopsided, like, yes, we'll have that discussion now. And then we had the discussion and it was lopsided. And people are genuinely upset. There were questions asked about these ballots that were sent out pre-sorted standard. How did that happen? And we keep getting the same answer. Even though the chair of the election committee wasn't there, the president was there. And he keeps saying, like, well, it was a printing error or, there were mistakes. Um, but we want to know like what was actually ordered. What did we order? And he says, "Oh, well, we don't have the invoice from that yet. We don't have that information, and so we can't give it to you." And dude, somebody ordered these ballots, and we want to see what the order was. Like, even if the payment hasn't been made yet, and we'll talk about the payment, even if that hasn't happened, someone ordered these ballots. Well, did they order them first class or did they order them standard? Did they order them with return postage or did they order them blank? These are questions that there are answers to, and we are being stonewalled by our branch leadership. And even the treasurer came out during the meeting and said, look, this is all messed up because I'm the treasurer and I'm not even seeing like where they got the authorization to pay for this. All this stuff is supposed to be approved in advance and it never got approved. And so, dude, it is shenanigans all the way down. So, anyway, there will be a rerun of the election. We're trying to find out now. Michael and I and Jonathan have put in our appeal. So, step one of the appeal process, you have to wait for the election to finish. And then within 5 days, you have to mail off an appeal to your branch's election board or election committee. And then the election committee has to make a decision on what they're going to do within 30 days. And I would assume that that decision has to be run up the flagpole and like national has to sign off because if you're going to redo your election, they probably need to know. And so we put in for the entire election to be redone, including the nomination process, because there were multiple improprieties during the nomination process. And so if we're going to fix this, we should fix all of it. Don't just fix some of it and then leave it open to another appeal. Fix everything. And so, how's that going to play out? We don't know. We are waiting to find out. And, what are we going to do differently in the upcoming re-campaign? I don't know. I'll tell you, the number of votes that we got was pretty disappointing because we're the only ones with a platform, and we know we were going to stations and handing out our literature and working our network, and it can't compete with what the incumbent can do. And so that's why I'm hoping that maybe I can do these meetings before shifts to get people fired up, to get the word out, to show leadership, because the branch officers can go into the stations and glad hand people, and I can't do that. They could do that on the clock. I can't do that, and I'm also not going to spend $2,000 to send my mailer out. So this is this is what I'm left with. Is like on my days off, or maybe I can come into my own shift late so that I can go to another station before they clock in. I don't know. I'm going to have to figure that out, and that again, that's even if that's allowed. So that is the update for what happened at our branch meeting. And there's we have stuff in the works behind the scenes, Michael and I, that we can't talk about yet, but it's going to stay interesting for a while yet. And in the meantime, I'm probably going to drop this. Maybe I'll have an episode with Michael on in the near future. But for now, I'm going to get back to education. So I have a few episodes in the can, stuff that I've recorded in the meantime, that I'll put those episodes out and get back to recording the postal stand up on a regular basis and see if I can figure out how this Audacity works so that I can make everything sound beautiful. I'll tell you this, like the clipping and editing of the audio track itself, like cutting stuff out or whatever, that's really nice. And that I seem to have that reasonably figured out. But that's all I got. So anyway, that's what's going on. There's your update. Thank you guys for listening. I will catch you next time.